Hello everyone, welcome to Cashcroft TV. My name is Kalen Ashcroft. Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Ages of Empires, where we will be going through all the major world empires throughout history. As well, we will be highlighting a specific leader from each empire. So in this episode, we will be highlighting the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And from that empire, we will be highlighting Sigismund II Augustus. And as well, we will be highlighting the Aztec Empire and Moctezuma II Xocyotzin. Two very, very fascinating empires. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth is a fascinating federation. A great discussion in the Federalist Papers between the difference between a confederation and a federation is a fascinating discussion, maybe to read in tandem with this episode. As well, the Aztec Empire was one of the first empires I studied in grade school, so that was quite exciting for me. And Moctezuma II Xocyotzin is also a very, very fascinating and important leader, and especially his relationship with Cortez and the Spanish conquistadors. So without further ado, we will begin with the First Empire. So the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, formerly known as the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy, or Duchy, ruled by a duke, but it was one king, one monarch, as we shall see, was a dualistic state. Or a bi-confederation, two confederations of Poland and Lithuania, also considered a federation. We can call it either a federation or confederation. It's actually quite a big debate, and we can see the Federalist Papers for some discussions on that, and as well our episode on the League of the Amphictyons, for example, as well. This empire existed from 1569 to 1795 CE, that's the Common Era, and it was one of the largest and most populous countries or empires in the 16th and the 17th centuries Europe. So for some further background information as well, so the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, formerly known as the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, as mentioned, or simply Poland-Lithuania, was a bi-confederal state, sometimes called a federation as well, of Poland and Lithuania, ruled by a common monarch in a real union. So a union, that was one of the big discussions in the Federalist Papers. Should it be a full federation and a union versus a confederation? And it was who was both the King of Poland and the Grand Duke of Lithuania, so one single monarch. It was one of the largest and most populous countries in the 17th and 18th century Europe, as mentioned. And at its largest territorial extent, it was in the early 17th century. The Commonwealth covered almost 1 million kilometers squared, or even perhaps over that, 1.1 million square kilometers. And as of 1618, sustained a multi-ethnic population of almost 12 million, as we shall see. Of Polish and Latin were the two co-official languages as well, we shall see. And Catholicism served as the state religion as well. So as the structure in all of our empires, we will seek to find the rise and the fall to see why empires today, for example, might succeed or fail, to perhaps have a takeaway. So starting with the formation and rise of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth from 1569 to 1600 CE. So the Commonwealth was established by the Union of Lublin on July 1st, 1569. The union was a political agreement that joined the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania into a single state. The driving force behind the union was the need for a mutual defense against the growing threat of the Tsardom of Russia and other regional powers. For example, in the discussion in the Federalist Papers, for example, the confederations were created because a common enemy, but it was insufficient, so a federation was therefore perhaps necessary for the United States to be even stronger, because a common enemy wasn't sufficient. So perhaps a similar logic here. But the common threat, Russia and the other common enemies as well, and regional powers. So the new state was characterized by a unique political system, often referred to as the Golden Liberty. This system granted substantial autonomy to nobility, or the Szlachta, and included an elective monarchy. So in Commentaries of the Laws of England by Lord Blackstone, there are two types of monarchies, the hereditary and the elective. So this had periods of both, where the king was elected by the nobility. So Also in Alexis de Tocqueville on the decline and fall of the old republic. There's one of the reasons supposedly for the revolution was that the monarch got rid of those aristocrats who kind of serve as a buffer for them. So in this case, by giving lots of power to these aristocrats, it maintained the monarch potentially, or these slachta. Pardon me for my pronunciation. As for the golden age of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth from the 16th century to the mid-17th century CE. So during the golden age, the Commonwealth was a major European power. It was marked by political stability, a flourishing economy, and vibrant culture. Cities like Krakow, Warsaw, and Vilnius became centers of learning and the arts. The Commonwealth also became a haven for religious tolerance, enacting the Warsaw Confederation in 1573, which ensured freedom of religion for all citizens, so really quite forward-thinking for the time, and quite perhaps one of the reasons for its success during its time. Perhaps people wanted to live there if there was more religious tolerance, or at least did not want to leave, or at least were more patriotic. The economy was predominantly or primarily agrarian, with a significant portion of Europe's grain supplied by the Polish and Lithuanian estates. The nobility enjoyed considerable privileges, while the peasantry who worked on estates had few rights, so quite a division, however, within classes. Perhaps something that's later reconciled within these regions, but not during this period, or not during this empire as well. As for the wars and decline of this empire, however, starting from 1600 to 1700 CE, the 17th century brought numerous challenges. The conflicts with Sweden, the deluge, for example, in 1655 to 1660, Russia and the Ottoman Empire posed significant external threats to the empire. These drained the state's resources and led to significant loss of territory and population. The Swedish invasions, known as the Deluge as mentioned, was particularly destructive. Sweden, at the height of its power, invaded the Commonwealth, leading to widespread devastation and occupation in large parts of the country. This period also saw the rise of the Cossacks in Ukraine, culminating in the Khmelnytsky uprising in 1648 to 1657 CE, which further weakened the Commonwealth. So perhaps one of the driving forces, sometimes it's internal factors, sometimes it's external factors. Here it seems like there's very significant external factors, but it must be noted that although these external factors were prevalent, they had taken much of these territories from these external factors to begin with. As for, however, political instability and reforms in the 17th century to the 1791 CE, the early 18th century saw the Commonwealth become increasingly fragmented and unstable. The liberum veto, which allowed any member of the Sejm, or their parliament, to dissolve the assembly and nullify its decisions, paralyzed the government. So perhaps too democratic. Perhaps this veto power got abused too much. Furthermore, foreign powers, as mentioned, particularly Russia, Prussia, and Austria, began to intervene in the Commonwealth's internal affairs. So not only were they have these external military forces, but even within their own parliament there was threats. Efforts to, perhaps because they were maybe too tolerant to allow such perhaps diversity within their parliament, allowed for it to sort of external threats to take hold of it. But maybe it was the reason for its success to begin with, however. So maybe it was just not done properly, but not directionally incorrect. As for the efforts at reform were made, notably by King Stanislav II. My father's name is Stan Lee. I think there's some connection between Stanislav and Stan Lee. Augustus as well, a reference back to Augustus, the Roman emperor, who sought to modernize the state and strengthen central authority. The Constitution of May 3rd, 1791 was a significant reform attempt. It aimed to create a more efficient and centralized government, curtail the powers of nobility, and protect the rights of townspeople and peasantry. So a lot of problems going on here. So the nobility were too powerful and the peasants were not powerful enough. And so they tried to make this new constitution sort of address some of these internal turmoil, while these external threats were becoming more prevalent as well. However, These reforms were too late and faced stiff resistance from both domestic conservatives and neighboring powers. As for partitions and the end, from 1772 to 1795. So the final blow to the Commonwealth came through a series of partitions. For example, in the three separate acts in 1772, 1793, and 1795 CE, the Commonwealth's neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, systematically divided and annexed the territories. The first partition in 1772 saw significant portions of Polish and Lithuanian lands seized. The second partition in 1793 further reduced the Commonwealth's territory, and the third partition in 1795 effectively ended the existence of the independent state. So as for the legacy of this fascinating, very unique empire, and very powerful also during its peak, and numerous and wealthy and artistic and tolerant. As for its legacy, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth left a lasting legacy. It was one of the first states in Europe to adopt a constitution and a tradition of noble democracy influenced by political, cultural, and Central Eastern Europe. So perhaps even parts of the EU governance is influenced by this this multi-grouped parliament, for example. Furthermore, despite the fall, the idea of a united Poland and Lithuania continued to inspire future generations, perhaps even inspiring their agreement within the EU, and leading to eventual re-establishment of Poland as an independent state in 1918, and the emergence of Lithuania as a sovereign nation in 1990. So they are currently two sovereign separate states, however, as many of you likely know. The Commonwealth's emphasis, furthermore, on religious tolerance, cultural diversity, and mixed government system had a profound impact on the citizens and continue to be a point of reference in modern discussions of democracy and governance. So very, very, perhaps parliamentary democracy, for example, might seem common today, but considering all the empires we've covered historically, this is a very, very unique empire, relatively more democratic, maybe not for the peasants, but at least relative for the king relative to the aristocrat, so at least one further level down in terms of centralization. So as to highlight a specific leader from this empire, Sigismund II Augustus. So perhaps the most important ruler of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth is often considered to be Sigismund II Augustus, or Zygmunt II Augustus, who reigned as King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania from 1548 until his death in 1572. His reign was marked by significant political, military, and cultural developments, and played a crucial role in the formation of the Commonwealth itself, perhaps, and certainly likely the founder of the Commonwealth itself, or the Federation. So, for the background information, Sigismund II was born on the 1st of August, 2 days before my birthday, actually, a Leo, but that might be just dependent on cultural references, but maybe there is significance to it, in 1520 CE, dying on the 7th of July, 1572, soon less than a month before his birthday. And he was King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania, and his son Sigismund I the Old, he was the son of Sigismund I the Old, whom Sigismund II succeeded in 1548. He was the first ruler of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the last male monarch from the Jagiellonian dynasty, which we've referenced in previous episodes. As for his early life and ascension to the throne, so Sigismund II Augustus was born on the 1st of August 1520 CE in Krakow, Poland, the only son of Sigismund I the Old, quite a title to have, and Bona Sforza, a member of the influential Italian Sforza family, so perhaps half Italian himself, and perhaps showing some of the connection to Catholicism, for example, within the Commonwealth in throughout its history, but at the same time being perhaps only half Italian, showing that religious tolerance perhaps as well. He was groomed for leadership from a young age, receiving comprehensive education that included Latin, the classics, and political theory. Very, very fascinating topics, at least I find. In 1529, while still a child, Sigismund was crowned as the King of Poland in a move known as a viventi rege, or a coronation during the lifetime of the reigning monarch. In the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, it talks a lot about the importance, perhaps, of transferring power within the lifetime of an existing ruler, so it's not sort of abrupt. Firstly, it's intentional, but also there can be a transition period. He formally ascended to the throne, however, upon his father's death in 1548 CE. And it was originally, however, that process was designed, as mentioned, to ensure a smooth transition of monarchs. As for the political reforms and Union of Lublin, so Sigismund II Augustus is best remembered for his pivotal role in the establishment of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, recognizing the strategic advantages of a closer union between administrative integration. A great book by Clarence Strait, Union Now, also discusses the differences between a federation and a confederation. Recognizing the strategic advantages of a closer union, he championed the cause of political and administrative integration. This culminated in the Union of Lublin in 1569, which created a single state with a unified parliament, or known as the Sejm, and a single elected monarch. This union significantly strengthened the region against external threats and facilitated economic and cultural exchanges between the two nations. So, for example, a common theme in mergers and acquisitions is adding two companies together, hopefully as synergies, and the sum of parts might be greater than the sum would be greater than the individual parts separate, and perhaps this might have been true in this case. As for domestic policies and governance, Sigismund II Augustus was a pragmatic leader who sought to balance the interests of the nobility, the church, and the burghers, or the peasants. His reign saw efforts to centralize and streamline administration, although he faced significant resistance from the powerful Polish nobility, so perhaps less centralized than many of the other empires we've covered historically. Some of our empires, for example, even our earliest, like the Old Kingdom of Egypt, it was absolute power to the pharaoh. So here is a little bit more removed power with very powerful nobility, but still nonetheless a monarchy. He supported religious tolerance and implemented measures to protect the rights of different religious communities, which was essential to maintaining internal stability in a religiously diverse realm. So perhaps it was through necessity, perhaps it was through his own volition, but nonetheless it likely had a big influence on the current region today, which is quite religiously tolerant. As for military campaigns and foreign policy, during Sigismund II Augustus's reign, the Commonwealth engaged in several military conflicts. The most significant was the Livonian War in 1558 to 1583 CE, which involved a protracted struggle with Russia for control over the Baltic regions. Although the war was costly and ultimately inconclusive, it highlighted the need for greater military and administrative efficiency. Pardon me. Which Sigismund sought to address through reforms. Sigismund also navigated the complex diplomatic landscape of Europe, maintaining alliances with major powers such as the Holy Roman Empire and fostering good relations with neighboring states. Holy Roman Empire is an important empire we covered in a previous episode, and I'm grateful if you have or will check out that episode as well. Please note these do not need to be watched in chronological order, however. His foreign policy was characterized by a combination of diplomacy and military strength aimed at preserving the integrity and sovereignty of the Commonwealth. As for his personal life and legacy, Sigismund II Augustus's personal life was marked by tragedy and controversy. He married 3 times but had no surviving heirs, so quite a unique case. He created a succession crisis upon his death as well by not having a clear heir. His first marriage to Elizabeth of Austria ended with her untimely death in 1545, so perhaps an unfortunate period in his life. His second marriage to Barbara Radziwill, a Lithuanian noblewoman, so perhaps maybe to bridge that connection, was highly controversial and met with opposition from the Polish nobility and his mother. Barbara's death in 1551 further plunged him into personal grief, so 2 untimely dead wives. His third marriage to Catherine of Austria was politically motivated but remained childless, so perhaps maybe the third was not the woman of his love of his life, or maybe none of them were, but nonetheless none of them were produced children with him. But maybe that was whose fault? Maybe it was the nobility, maybe it was his fault, maybe it was the one of the wives' fault. It's impossible to tell, but nonetheless not perhaps an ideal personal life despite his public achievements. Sigismund II Augustus died on July 7th, 1572 CE in Knizen without a direct successor. His death marked the end of the Jagiellonian dynasty, therefore, in Poland and Lithuania. Despite the lack of an heir, his reign left a profound impact on the political landscape of Eastern Europe. The Union of Lublin, for example, his most significant achievement likely, laid the foundation for the state that would endure for 2 centuries, marking him as the founder of the Commonwealth or the Federation. As for the overall assessment and historical significance of this great leader, historians regard Sigismund II Augustus as a pivotal figure in the history of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. His efforts to integrate and unify Poland and Lithuania set the stage for a period of relative stability and prosperity. His commitment to religious tolerance and political reform demonstrated a forward-thinking approach to governance that contrasted the more autocratic tendencies of many contemporary European rulers and most empires we've covered previously. Sigismund II Augustus's legacy is one monarch who navigated complex political, social, and military challenges with a vision of a unified and resilient state. His reign represents a high point in the history of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and underscores the enduring significance of his contributions to the reign's development and future development of Europe. So very, very important leader in a very, very important empire as well. So that is the life of Sigismund II Augustus and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. As for the content of the slide, once again, the title, Sigismund II Augustus and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. It was also known as the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was a bi-confederal state or federation ruled by a monarch in real union. The significant leader we highlighted was Sigismund II Augustus. The empire was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The period was from 1569 to 1795 CE, which Common Era or early modern period. The modern locations include Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, Belarus, Latvia, Estonia, Russia, Moldova, Slovakia, and Czech Republic. So it encompassed many other countries as well during its peak and during different periods. The size was million square kilometers was 1.1, so our average, but however we're only covering the largest empires to begin with, but our average of our largest empires is about 1.14, so about average in size. But also must be noted this is a sedentary and quite a developed period in history, so a difficult region to rule over with many fortresses, for example. Million square kilometers, the equivalent would be 0.42%. Of the world would be 0.82%. The capital covered was Krakow from 1569 to 1793. However, it was de facto capital from 1569 to 1596. So therefore, the de facto capital changed to Warsaw during a little bit earlier, but then it officially changed. And Warsaw was the capital from 1793 to 1796, and it became the de facto capital, however, from 1596 to 1795, so it became de facto capital before it officially changed. The government was a parliamentary monarchy, and it was a hereditary monarchy from 1569 to 1572. It was an elective monarchy from 1573 to 1071, and as well from 1792 and to 1795, and it was a constitutional monarchy from 1791 to 1792. So various forms of monarchy. Blackstone sums it up as basically hereditary and elective. Constitutional has a constitution, but it's still either a hereditary or a elective monarchy. Common languages included Polish and Latin were the official languages. There was also Ruthenian, German, Lithuanian, and many other regions because it's quite a linguistically diverse region that they ruled over at various periods. The religion was Catholicism was the official language. Eastern Orthodoxy was also quite a prevalent language. Protestantism, Judaism, and Islam were also common languages within the region. The population likely was up to 8 to 12 million, so smaller than perhaps the population of the regions today, but larger than many of the empires that we covered previously, even those that have covered over larger areas. and this is perhaps in part due to technological changes and the fertility of the region at the time. As for images, in the top left we have a portrait by Lucas Cranach the Younger in 1553 of Sigismund II Augustus himself. To the right of that we have both the official seal and the flags of royal standards of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. You can see a lot of important imagery on those, and I suggest looking into those into detail. I think by looking at the imagery, for example, we can get an idea of what their values were as an empire. To the right of that, we have the Sejm, or the parliament, key defining feature of this Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Although they did have a monarch, they also had a parliament, and perhaps the nobles were at times too powerful, and perhaps in part of their decline. And it was this is an image of the parliament in the 17th century. But as well, we can also see we have the king himself in the center. So still a key defining feature as well of this empire. Below that, we have the Union of Lublin. It's too small, of course, to read, but you can see what the document might look like, that joined the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania in 1569 CE. Below that, we have an image of Warsaw near the end of the Commonwealth's existence, and painting by Bernardo Belletto in the 1770s. A beautiful, beautiful architecture already at this time. To the right of that, we have some additional information. So the Union was established on the 1st of July, 1569. The first partition was on the 5th of August, 1772. The Third May Constitution, which I tried to address these declines but unsuccessfully, but one of the earlier constitutions we have seen, was on the 3rd of May, 1791. The second partition was on the 23rd of January, 1793, and the third partition was on the 24th of October, 1795. And at the top right, we have a map of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the light green are its vassal states at its peak in 1619. So as we can see, ruling over many more countries than just Poland and Lithuania today. So that is Sigismund II Augustus and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and we'll discuss the leader more and their respective empire in the comparison. After covering Moctezuma II, Xocyotzin, and the Aztec Empire. So starting with the empire, the Aztec Empire, this is one of the earliest empires that I studied. The Aztec Empire and the Carthaginian Empire were two that my father suggested I get into when I was young, doing a grade school project, and now it's kind of full circle, maybe. So let's see how we find it today. So the Aztec Empire, known as the Triple Alliance, was a Mesoamerican empire, the largest at the time of the Spanish conquest, in the base centered in the Valley of Mexico, a region I actually more recently got to visit. It existed from the early 15th century until the conquest of the Spanish forces in 1521 CE, Common Era. The empire is renowned for its advanced civilization, complex social structure, impressive architectural achievements, and vast networks of trade and tribute. So, further information, the Aztec Empire, or the Triple Alliance, was an alliance of three Nahua city-states, those being Mexico, Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan. There are three city-states that culminated to form the alliance of the three Nahua city-states of the Aztec Empire. Pardon me for my pronunciation. These three city-states that ruled that area in and around the Valley of Mexico, sort of centered around this region, which is close to Mexico City today, and actually Mexico City is about in this region, particularly in Tenochtitlan. From 1428 until the combined forces of the Spanish conquistadors and their native allies who ruled under Hernan Cortes defeated them in 1521. Cortes today sounds almost synonymous with a sort of something fearful, but maybe that's something that's been imprinted on me through my experience in researching this. But nonetheless, it must be noted that it was combined forces, so it wasn't Cortes alone that took them. There was also neighboring indigenous groups that united with Cortes to defeat this Aztec Empire, the strongest Mesoamerican empire at the time of the conquest. So perhaps if Cortes had no help from the other indigenous communities, maybe they might not have been so successful, or as successful. As for their origins and rise of this important Aztec Empire, the Triple Alliance, in approximately 1300 to 1428 CE. So the origins of the Aztec Empire trace back to the Mexica people who migrated into the Valley of Mexico around 1300 CE. Initially, they were a nomadic tribe seeking to establish themselves among a more established city-states. According to that legend, they were guided by their god, Huitzilopochtli, pardon me for my pronunciation, to settle where they saw an eagle perched on a cactus eating a snake. Interesting, kind of parallel. The founding of Rome by Romulus and Remus was based on the eagles as well, but a different story. But nonetheless, the significance of eagles across cultures that likely, as far as we know, were not in communication. An image that became essential to their mythology and is depicted on the modern Mexican flag, this eagle. In 1325, the Mexica founded Tenochtitlan on an island in Lake Texcoco. Over the next century, they built a powerful city-states through the strategic alliances and military conquests. The Mexica initially served as mercenaries as well for more powerful neighbors, but their power grew steadily and formed and eventually became the leading power in this region. So starting from mercenaries, that's why perhaps in the Prince, old book, one of the earliest books in political philosophy I read is to fear perhaps mercenaries because maybe they might come to rule over you eventually, and as that seems to be the history of the Aztec Empire. The formation of the Triple Alliance in 1428 marked the formal beginning of the Aztec Empire. So the uniting of the three, is the start of the Aztec Empire. This alliance included Tenochtitlan, Tecococo, and Tlacopan, under the leadership of Xocyotzin. That sounds a lot like one of the famous gods as well, who reigned from 1427 to 1440. The alliance defeated the dominant Tenepec state in the Azcapotzalco, asserting their dominance in the region. Pardon me for my pronunciation, but they defeated the Tenepec state to form authority in this region. As for the expansion and zenith of the Aztec Empire from 1428 to 1502 CE, following the victory over the Azcapotzalco, the Aztec Empire expanded rapidly. Successive rulers such as Moctezuma, as we shall see, the first, reigned from 1440 to 1469, and Huitzilopochtli, who reigned from 1486 to 1502, extended the empire's reach through a combination of warfare and diplomacy. That is, Moctezuma the first, not Moctezuma the second, whom we will highlight in a biography to come. By the late 15th century, the empire controlled much of Central America, encompassing various ethnic groups and cultures. So multi-ethnic and multicultural, kind of like the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth as we're combining this empire with. The empire's capital, Tenochtitlan, became a bustling metropolis renowned for its impressive architecture, including Templo Mayor, grand palaces, and extensive causeways and canals. The city was also a hub of commerce, art, and religious activity. Also famous for perhaps some sacrifices as well. The Aztec economy was based on agriculture, particularly the cultivation of maize, beans, and squash. Maize and beans actually form a full protein, supported by an extensive system of chinapas, or floating gardens as well, which have further provided vegetables, for example. Tribute from conquered territories further enriched the empire, bringing in goods such as textiles, precious metals, and cocoa. The Aztec, which they could either often drank as tea, for example, or even ate as well. The Aztec social structure was highly hierarchical, with the emperor, Huitzilopochtli, known as at the top, followed by the nobles, the Pitlatin, commoners, the Macaluitin, serfs, and slaves, so separate class hierarchies within this empire. Religion, furthermore, played a central role in the Aztec society, where, for example, the emperor was considered a god as well, with numerous gods and elaborate ceremonies, often involving human sacrifice, believed to sustain the universe and ensure agricultural fertility. As for the decline and fall, however, of the Aztec Empire from 1502 to 1521 CE, the empire's decline began during the reign of Moctezuma II, who reigned from 1502 to 1520 CE, whose rule saw increasing internal strife and external threats, particularly. Moctezuma II attempted to consolidate his power by strengthening the nobility's authority, which led to discontent among common people and subject states. So already there were these internal threats within Moctezuma's lifetime before the conquest, outside of the threat of the conquistadors. In 1519 CE, Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortes arrived on the eastern coast of Mexico with a small force. Cortes formed alliances with various indigenous groups who were enemies of the Aztecs, such as the Tlahuacans, pardon me. These alliances provided the Spanish with vital military support and local knowledge, so it must be noted that perhaps Cortes, without the support of these other indigenous groups, may not have been able to defeat the Aztec Empire. Moctezuma II initially attempted to appease the Spanish, believing them to be the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. However, tensions escalated, and in November 1519, Cortes captured Moctezuma, effectively taking control of Tenochtitlan, the capital. The situation deteriorated further after Moctezuma's death, leading to a violent conflict known as La Noche Triste, or the Night of Sorrows, in 1520 CE, where the Spanish and their allies suffered significant losses while fleeing the cities. In 1521 CE, after regrouping and receiving reinforcements, Cortes launched a final assault on Tenochtitlan. The siege lasted for several months, with the Spanish and their allies cutting off food and water supplies. So very, very ruthless battle tactics, but perhaps necessary for their ultimate victory. The city fell in August 13, 1521 CE, marking the end of the Aztec Empire, or the Triple Alliance. As for the aftermath and legacy of this important empire, the largest in Mesoamerica at the time of the Spanish conquest, the fall of Tenochtitlan led to the establishment of New Spain, with the Spanish systematically dismantling Aztec institutions and imposing their own colonial administration. Despite this, Aztec culture, language, Nahuatl, and traditions persisted and influenced the development of Mexican identity. So it's still a very important link between Mexican identity and Aztec culture. The Aztec Empire remains a subject of fascination due to its advanced civilization, remarkable achievements in architecture and agriculture and art, and dramatic story of its rise and fall. Therefore, modern Mexico honors Aztec heritage, celebrating the cultural, historical legacy as one of the most powerful, sophisticated empires in America. So much history in Mexico related to the Aztec Empire, which I'm grateful to have experienced, but I very much like to experience more, and I hope you would be grateful to experience it as well. So as for the specific leader whom we are highlighting, Moctezuma II, Xocyotzin. So the most important ruler of the Aztec Empire, or the most perhaps famous ruler of the Aztec Empire, is often considered to be Moctezuma II, also known as Moctezuma Xocyotzin, who reigned from 1502 to 1520 CE. His reign marked the zenith of the Aztec Empire in terms of territorial expansion and the onset of its decline due to the Spanish conquest. So, further information, Moctezuma Xocyotzin, who lived from approximately 1466 to the 29th of June 1520, referred to retroactively in European sources as Moctezuma II, was the 9th emperor of the Aztec Empire, also known as the Mexica Empire, reigning from 1502 to 1503 to 1520 CE, through his marriage with Queen, this is going to be difficult, Xocyotzin of Ecatepec. Pardon me for my pronunciation, but I'm trying to do it phonetical as well, perhaps, so for other non-native speakers, they might be able to find the word, if need be. One of his two wives was also king consort of Atlalpetl, so married into a powerful religious family, or a powerful family within Aztecs to become emperor, but also having a very powerful lineage himself, as we shall see. So as for his early life and ascension to power, Moctezuma II was born around 1466 to Emperor Xocyotzin and his wife. So his father was the emperor, so likely he would have become the emperor himself in a hereditary monarchy. As member of the royal family, he received an elite education, or best education one could get, or what at least they believed to be the best education one could give an emperor, soon to become emperor, which included training in warfare, religion, politics, and leadership, all of which would become important in his life. Moctezuma served as a high-ranking military commander and as priest, gaining valuable experience and establishing a reputation as a capable leader. So being both a military leader and a priest, so kind of getting both full experience. Upon the death of his uncle, Emperor Xocyotzin, in 1502, Moctezuma was chosen as his successor. So it was actually his uncle, not his father, who was emperor. His ascension was marked by significant ceremony and celebration, reflecting the importance of the role of Aztec society. It must also be noted that this was like the zenith of the Aztec Empire, so perhaps if the Spanish never came, it might have even continued to expand and grow. As for the reign and achievements of Moctezuma II, Moctezuma II's reign is often considered the height of the Aztec Empire. He undertook extensive administrative reforms to centralize power, strengthen the nobility, and consolidate his rule. So once again, strengthening nobility, as per Alex Tocqueville on the old regime in the French Revolution, a stronger aristocracy can serve as a buffer state to defend the monarch. One of the significant reforms was to reconstrue the tribute system, ensuring a steady flow of resources to Tenochtitlan from conquered territories, so perhaps similar to the Athenian model, collecting tributes from subordinate or vassal states. Under Moctezuma II, was plugged in. Pardon me, my laptop died. Under Moctezuma II's leadership, the Aztec Empire expanded its boundaries through military campaigns, reaching its greatest territorial extent under his leadership. He successfully incorporated various regions into his empire, bringing diverse peoples and cultures together. These expansions, however, often led to increased tensions and resistance among subjugated states, so difficult to rule over diverse populations, as we have observed with other empires. As for governance and society under this leader, Moctezuma II sought to reinforce the divine nature of the Aztec monarchy. He was elevated the status of emperor, distancing himself from the populace and nobility, so even creating further separation. Maybe this would have been posed a threat if it were not for the Spanish conquest. This move was intended to solidify, however, the divine right of rule, but also created a gap between the emperor and the common people, so it could be successful, perhaps in the Egyptian model, but also could be equally unsuccessful, as we've seen. Or, for example, will see with the French in the French Revolution. The religious practices, however, and as well the ceremonies flourished during Moctezuma II's reign. He emphasized the worship of the god Huitzilopochtli and conducted numerous rituals, including human sacrifices, to appease the gods and ensure prosperity to the empire. Tenochtitlan continued to grow as a cultural and religious center, with impressive architectural projects like the expansion of the Temple Mayor. As for the encounter, however, with the Spanish, marking the beginning of the decline of the Aztec Empire. The most significant event during Moctezuma II's reign was the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors led by Hernán Cortés in the 1519. The initial interactions between Moctezuma and Cortés were marked by caution and diplomacy. So it started off quite positive, however, things turned quite sour. Moctezuma influenced the prophecies and belief that Cortés might be a god of Quetzalcoatl returning. So this is great history. For example, Graham Hancock researches much into history of this Quetzalcoatl, who is this sort of bringer of knowledge by sea. So they thought Cortés might have been this individual, or this god coming to bring wisdom. And they welcomed Spanish into Tenochtitlan in November of 1519. However, the relationship quickly soured when the Spanish sought to exploit the empire's wealth and impose their own rule, for example, noticing they had significant gold. Moctezuma found himself a prisoner in his own palace, controlled by Cortés and his men. The situation deteriorated, leading to increased unrest among the Aztecs. As for his death and legacy, in June 1520, the growing tensions and uprisings against the Spanish presence, Moctezuma II was killed. The exact circumstances of his death remain unclear, however. Some accounts suggest he was killed by the Spanish, while others claim he was stoned by his own people for perceived betrayal and failure to defend the city. So either way, it was the Spanish threat to the city that caused his own people to kill him, or the Spanish themselves killed him. Moctezuma II's death marked a turning point in the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire. After a brutal siege, Tenochtitlan fell to the Spanish and their indigenous allies on August 13 of 1521. So the other indigenous allies supported Cortés as well in their ultimate defeat, leading to the collapse of the Aztec Empire and the establishment of the Spanish colonial rule and the Spanish Empire, as we will highlight to come in a future episode. So as for the assessment and historical significance of Moctezuma II, Moctezuma II remains a complex and controversial figure in history. His reign represents both the peak of Aztec civilization and the beginning of its downfall. While he is often criticized for his handling of the Spanish invasion, his efforts to centralize and strengthen the empire, as well as his contributions to the cultural and religious life, are significant. I think he really manifested the direction that the Aztec Empire was going if it were not for the intervention of the Spanish conquistadors, for better or for worse, in their direction. Moctezuma II's legacy endures in Mexican history and culture. He is remembered as a powerful yet tragic figure whose reign encapsulates the grandeur and vulnerabilities of the Aztec Empire at its height. His encounters with the Spanish conquistadors and the subsequent fall of Tenochtitlan are pivotal events that reshaped the history of the Americas. Just a fascinating story to really see. Many of our empires sort of peaked maybe midway through and then slowly declined. This empire sort of declined right at its peak, so it's a sort of really quite a tragic history, and manifested most significantly in its leader, Moctezuma II, Xocyotzin. So as for the content of the slide, the title we have Moctezuma II, Xocyotzin, and the Aztec Empire. It was an alliance of the three Nahua city-states, Mexico, Tenochtitlan, Tetzcoco, and Tlacopan. It was a ruled area in and around, or they ruled an area in and around the Valley of Mexico until the defeat by the combined forces of the Spanish conquistadors and native allies. So important to note that combined component. The significant leader we have is Moctezuma II, Xocyotzin. The empire period was from 1428 to 1521 CE, was a Pre-Columbian era, also known as the Age of Discovery. The modern location included Mexico. All was within that borders. Million square kilometers was 0.22, so quite a bit smaller, but the largest in Mesoamerica, and it is quite a dense region, as we shall see in terms of population. About the similar population to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, but a fraction of the geographical size, partially perhaps due to their own technologies in agriculture, combining, for example, maize and beans. Million square kilometers was 0.08. That's equivalent. A percent of the world, 0.16, excluding Antarctica. But once again, they were sedentary people, so it's more difficult to conquer fortresses, for example, than a nomadic people, potentially. Capital city was Mexico Tenochtitlan, which was the de facto capital, because there were three city-states, technically. The government was a monarchy. The common languages was Nahuatl, was the lingua franca, the common language, but there were many others, because there were many other regions that were conquered within the Aztec Empire, not to mention the three alliances themselves. The three city-states within the one alliance, the alliance of three. The religion was the Aztec state religion as well, which involved, for example, sacrifice, but also connection between the leader or the emperor and the god himself, or one of the gods. Population was between 5 to 15 million, so a larger range, but nonetheless quite a significant population. Not as large as the population certainly today, but nonetheless quite large, significant compared to most of the empires we covered before it. In terms of images, in the top left we have an image of Moctezuma II himself, looking quite glorious. To the right of that we have the palace name glyphs of Texcoco, Tenochtitlan, and Tlacopan. So the glyphs themselves, so that would be how we would write perhaps these three city-states, through the glyphs of the Triple Alliance. To the right of that is the first page of the Codex Boturini, showing the migration of the Mexica, so showing that perhaps the Mexica came by boat to the region they are in today. There's many interpretations. Graham Hancock has some quite fascinating interpretations of it as well. So I'm grateful to meet someday. Below, to the right of that, we have the jaguar warriors in the Flowery War from the Codex Xocyotzin, so famous for their jaguar warriors who looked like jaguars, who were quite threatening. In the age of empires, the game, there was the Aztec Empire that had jaguar warriors who were quite effective. Part of the inspiration of the series titled Ages of Empires was that game. To the left of that, we have the Codex from the Codex Azcatlan, depicting the Spanish army with Cortez and Malinche in front. So, very, as we can see, very threatening. How fully armored they must have been, how threatening it must have seemed, even to the effective jaguar warriors. And to the right of that, we have Xocyotzin and Lake Texcoco in 1519. So we can see it's really impressive irrigation, almost forming an island of itself. There's lots in the museum in Mexico City. Really has some fascinating pictures of what the Aztec Empire, or Tenochtitlan specifically, might have looked like. So the empire was preceded by Tenochtitlan, Tlacopan, the Azcapotzalco, the Colhuacan, pardon me for pronunciation, Texcoco, the Chalco, the Coacomilco, the Cocooco, and the Cochilahuaca, pardon me for pronunciation, and they were all succeeded by New Spain, or the Spanish Empire. I believe I did not highlight the I did cover that, but nonetheless, that is the very fascinating, in my opinion, and pardon me, we have the map. The map, we have the three nations. We have Tlacopan here, Texcoco here, and Mexico Tenochtitlan here. So very close, the three city-states were ruling over a large region, but quite spotty as well. For example, these neighboring states, that some of which would combine with Cortez to ultimately capture and defeat the Aztec Empire. So very, very fascinating empire, and really, I think, a foundational empire to study in terms of Mesoamerican history, being the largest at the time of the Spanish conquest, and much mythology that goes into it, and much work of, for example, Graham Hancock has recently rekindled a lot of people's inspiration with this region, I believe. So as for a comparison between the two very, very fascinating leaders, Sigismund II, Augustus, and Moctezuma II, Xocyotzin. First thing, they are both the second to their name. So, Sigismund II, Augustus of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and Moctezuma II of the Aztec Empire were both significant rulers in their respective regions during the 16th century. Despite ruling vastly different empires and cultures, their reigns share some similarities and notable contrasts, which we will highlight. So, as for their background and rise to power, Sigismund II Augustus was born on the 1st of August 1520 to Sigismund I the Old of Bona Sforza in Krakow, Poland. He was crowned as the King of Poland in 1529, while his father was still alive, a move designed to ensure a smooth transition of successors, so a unique transition, but not entirely unique amongst other empires, but at least unique relative to Moctezuma II. And he officially became King of Poland and the Grand Duke of Lithuania in 1548. However, he would formally combine the two, as we shall see. He would be the first to form the Polish-Lithuanian Empire itself, so he's perhaps the first empire, whereas, as we shall see, Moctezuma II was the last emperor of the Aztec Empire. So Moctezuma II, Xocyotzin, was born in 1466 CE to Emperor Xocyotzin in Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. He ascended to the throne in 1502 CE after the death of his uncle, Emperor Xocyotzin. So his father and his uncle were actually both emperors. So it was certain that he would become emperor, but he was the last emperor of the Aztec Empire, as opposed to Sigismund II Augustus, his father was a king, but he was the first to unite formally Poland and Lithuania into a federation, or a union. Furthermore, Moctezuma II's rise was marked by elaborate ceremonies and celebration reflecting the divine nature of the Aztec king. So Moctezuma II had a divine nature, where Sigismund II didn't necessarily have that same divine connection with the god. As for their governance and reform, but still some sort of divine right of kings, as was natural in Europe, but not to the same worship level of the Aztec Empire. As for their governance and reforms, Sigismund II Augustus was prominent for his role in the Union of Lublin in 1569, which would unite Poland and Lithuania, which formed the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, creating a unified state and a single parliament and an elective monarchy. And furthermore, he attempted to centralize power and strengthen the administrative framework of the state, so a centralizing figure. And he promoted religious tolerance, enacting policies to protect different religious communities within the Commonwealth. Moctezuma II sought to centralize power as well and strengthen the nobility's authority, attempting to reinforce the divine right of the empire, sometimes also stepping on the feet, perhaps, of the nobility. He expanded the tribute system, ensuring a steady flow of resources to the capital, Xocyotzin, so that is evidence of centralization, certainly. He emphasized religious ceremonies and human sacrifice to appease the gods and sustain the empire. So perhaps because it had multiple gods, it is somewhat religiously tolerant, but at the same time, it was really just the Aztec religion, whereas Sigismund II was more religiously tolerant. For example, Catholicism is from Rome, Islam, Judaism were also there, Protestantism was, I would say, more religiously tolerant, or more of a focus on religious tolerance than the Aztec Empire. But because perhaps of polytheism or multiple gods, that might be seen as a form of religious tolerance. But nonetheless, Moctezuma II, to go into sacrifices, perhaps the people wanted to be sacrificed, but it's still perhaps some greater religious fervor than in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, or particularly under Sigismund II Augustus. As for their territorial expansion and military campaigns, Sigismund II Augustus, his reign saw relative peace and internal consolidation rather than significant territorial expansion, so more consolidation. He focused on strengthening the existing territories and forging alliances to protect the Commonwealth from external threats, particularly from the growing power of Russia and the Ottoman Empire. So as we saw, that federation was formed in part because of the Russian threat. And he focused on strengthening the existing territories. As for Moctezuma II, under his leadership, the Aztec Empire reached its greatest territorial extent through military campaigns and incorporated various regions in the empire, bringing a diverse people and cultures, although the expansion increased territories among subject states. So expanding, but ultimately the Spanish conquistadors would ultimately lead to an ultimate defeat. So maybe Moctezuma expanded more than Sigismund II Augustus did through conquest, but he also lost more through conquest. Furthermore, due to their challenges and declines, Sigismund II Augustus faced challenges in consolidating power due to the powerful Polish nobility and the destabilizing influence of the liberum veto of the Sejm. So, as we noted, even one of his wives was not approved by this Polish nobility, so didn't have absolute control, it seems, or at least absolute control over the minds of the people, but might have had more practical control nonetheless. Whereas Moctezuma II, also furthermore on Sigismund II, he had efforts to retain control, but met with resistance and was not fully able to realize the complex political landscape of the Commonwealth. But it would develop over time, he being the first emperor of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. As for Moctezuma II, he faced significant challenges with the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors led by Hernan Cortes, at first thinking him to be a god, Xocyotzin, in 1519. His initial attempts at diplomacy and appeasement failed, leading to the capture and subsequent loss of the control of the Xocyotzin. His death in 1520 marked a turning point in the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire, leading to the eventual fall in 1521. As for their legacy, Sigismund II Augustus is remembered for his role in the formation of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, a major political achievement that influenced the region's history. His reign is seen as a period of cultural flourishing and relative internal stability, despite the challenges of political reform. But nonetheless, maybe not all through conquest, the unifying and creating a union was a very, very profound movement. Whereas Moctezuma II is viewed as a complex and tragic figure whose reign represented both the zenith and beginning of the downfall of the Aztec Empire, so almost two opposite ends of the spectrum. His interactions with the Spanish and dramatic fall of Xocyotzin remain pivotal in the events of history and the Americas. So thus, while Sigismund II Augustus and Moctezuma II Xocyotzin both sought to centralize and strengthen their respective empires, they faced vastly different challenges. Sigismund's efforts were focused on internal consolidation and political reform, whereas Moctezuma's reign was marked by territorial expansion and dealing with the existential threat and external threat posed by foreign invaders. Both rulers' legacies are defined by their attempts to navigate and manage the complex political landscapes of their times, leading to the lasting impact they had on their respective regions and histories. So two vastly different empires, two vastly different leaders. Could they have succeeded in each other's positions? Could Moctezuma II, Xocyotzin, have founded an empire or united and formed by Confederation? And could Sigismund II have held off the Spanish conquistadors? I think both of them face very significant challenges. It's impossible to tell, but both of them seem to have attempted, or at least endeavored, to do the best for their people that they could, or at least what they thought to be the best. So, nonetheless, that is the fascinating Polish-Lithuanian Confederation and the Aztec Empire, and Sigismund II Augustus and Moctezuma II Xocyotzin. This is Ages of Empires, episode 55. My name is Kalen Ashcroft. This is also Cashcroft TV. Thank you very, very, very much for your support. My apologies for the battery loss in the middle, and I'd be very grateful if you continue to provide it. Thank you so much.